Hey ViteConf, I have a question for you. Do you remember how we started with web? I think for a lot of us, the answer might be this: our cute little HTML, CSS projects. This is how I started as well. And I think there are some really cool things about the HTML, or there are some really cool things about the vanilla setup in general. One is that it's really easy to get started. All you need is one index or HTML file, and then I can just run it on browser. This is one of the reasons why I started with web because the entry barrier was so low. I could see things on my screen. It's flexible. You're not dealing with any additional abstraction layers, so you can pretty much do anything that you want to do. There isn't any library or framework coming in your way. It has a comparatively smaller learning curve. There are things which might be difficult, but this is the setup that we initially learned, so we end up getting familiar with the setup. Um, it can be easy to deploy. It's a static website, so almost any deployment service will easily allow you to deploy it with not much of an hassle. It can be made super fast. You have things in your control. You're writing the code, you are making the network requests, so you can make sure to make it super fast. But there's some obvious cons about this setup, which is one of the reasons why we don't use this as often. One is there's no reusability. If you're building a multi-page application where I want a navigation bar and footer on every page, I cannot just define navigation bar once and reuse it everywhere. That's just not possible in the HTML setup. You can do that with JavaScript maybe, but again, you go the client-side JavaScript route for that. It's not possible in the HTML itself. There's no support for runtime libraries, or there's no support for runtime in general in HTML. So if I want to maybe convert my markdown into HTML during the runtime, that's not really possible. I just have to statically define the HTML for anything I want to build with HTML. There's no custom routing. If I'm building a blog where I want multiple posts to be generated, I cannot dynamically generate them. Again, I have to go and define HTML file for every single blog, which is probably something that you don't want to do. We probably want to write blogs in markdowns and dynamically generate those routes. And this is one of the biggest cons. There's no way to write logic in your HTML. So you can't write loops or conditions in your HTML. You have to statically define every block. So if I'm in my portfolio, if I have a projects array, I cannot just loop through that projects array and render my projects. I have to statically define each and every project. And these cons are not something new. This is something that we've been discussing, and pretty much every library solves these cons. So nothing really fancy about that, except a lot of times while you're trying to fix these cons, you also end up going away from the HTML, CSS, JS setup. So you end up losing some of these pros. So your maybe initial setup gets complicated, or you end up compromising on the flexibility. The learning curve might increase, or there might be performance hit at some places. What if we could fix all the pros? What if we could fix the cons of HTML, but still keep the pros? So I had this idea that what if you could build a framework that's very close to the HTML CSS setup, but just makes minor tweaks to let you fix some of these cons. And this is something that I've been working on. I'm here to talk about. It's a project called Abell. Abell is a low-level framework agnostic and Vite-Powered static site generator. It stays close to the HTML CSS setup, but makes minor tweaks. We'll talk about this in details. I have a lot of demos. Before we go ahead, I'm really sorry for building another one. I know there's a lot of static site generators available, but this one might seem a little different and you might actually like it. So do hear me out and give it a try. I'm Saurabh. I love web tooling. I be building packages or smaller tools on my GitHub. You can check them out. I also work as a front-end engineer at Razorpay, where I mostly work on the design system. And let's go back to this. HTML is cool, but it has issues. Um, let's go and try to fix these things one by one. First is easy to get started. Can we build a framework that's as easy to get started as HTML is? Let's see. This is the HTML basic hello world example that I have. There's no other file, just one index or HTML. If I were to run this, I can just run it with any static server and I'll get the output. With Abell, I can just turn this into a .abell file and run it with Abell dev. I'm just using npx to execute, but you can also install it and execute. And yeah, you have things here up and running. All we had to do is just one file. So you can start your projects with just one file without really any configurations or setups. But hey, this is just static thing. It's just HTML with different syntax, right? There's no fun in that. Except it's not really just HTML. It's HTML plus JavaScript inside HTML. So you can write curly braces, these double curly braces, and inside this you can write any JavaScript. So, and it gets executed on the build time. So if I go to my view page source, you would see this 12 here as well because it was just executed on the build time. I can also do some other JavaScript, like maybe just uppercase this, and that works as well. Cool. Let's try to fix this. Where what if we could loop over the array in this setup? Let's try to go and do that. In Abell, if you were to define a variable, you can define it using a declaration block. You just write this declaration comment, which makes sure to not print anything that is coming as an output. So you can declare things here, and it also moves things to the correct place. So I can go and just define some data here. So I just have this projects data, which is like a JSON with title and href, and we can go and try to render this. So you just type this projects here. I'm just putting in an ordered list. You can just dot map to the project, which again, we're just writing JavaScript inside the curly braces. Then I can create list ahref. So this kind of looks ugly, just putting things in string. You can actually make it look a bit pretty by using HTML comment here, which just highlights things. This is controlled by the Abell syntax highlighter. You can check it out for VS Code. And then I can have project.title. And let me just finish this list. And I want to define href here. Project.href. Cool. We have this list of projects now, which is probably similar to how you would want in your portfolio, where you just want to loop over your projects or just loop over some content rather than defining every single block for that. All right, we have fixed this. Next thing we want to fix is, okay, before that, I probably don't want to define this project here. Maybe I just want to define it as a div separate file. So I can just go into project.js and maybe export. And just export projects from here. And here I don't really need this declaration block. So I can do import. And I can go to projects. And this continues to work. Where go change things. Cool, it's working. Remember how I said it's Abell is built on top of Vite? It's powered by Vite, which means anything that's possible in Vite is possible in Abell, which means you can just go and turn this into a TS file and things keep working because Vite supports TypeScript by default. And you just get all the good things about Vite in this. Next thing I wanted to show was again back to Vite. This is just a Vite project, so I can go and define a Vite.ts and also maybe I'll just add define config here and export default define config, and then I can define any of the Vite plugins here. There's one change. Abell itself is a syntax that needs some resolutions. So you can actually install the Vite plugin Abell here and pass it to this, which will make the Abell files work. But if you don't want to deal with all this, what you can also do is just remove this and just import from Abell instead of just import this define config from Abell instead of Vite, and things continue to work. Okay, let's try to install some Vite plugins. What I want to do is first install The Vite plugin. Okay, before that, we've been running this on npx. We should actually just install Abell locally. So we'll do npm sevdev Abell latest. And we'll have to make some changes here. One is we need type module, then we need scripts. One is the dev script, which will let us run the dev server, which will be Abell dev, which this is the command that we've been running. There is another command called generate, Abell generate, or you can also do Abell build. It's the same command. I just usually like generate, but generate will actually give you the final website. So this is like your build. Cool. I'm going to install Vite plugin MD2 HTML, which I can use to convert Markdown into HTML. So we'll start importing Markdown in this. Now here I can just import the Vite plugin. So yeah, I'll just I'll just import the Vite plugin, and this should be good. All right. So what we need is we want to output HTML here. So anytime you want to deal with some new syntax, maybe .markdown or .mdx, you just have to find a plugin, a Vite plugin that converts that syntax into HTML. So example, in this case, we're converting Markdown into HTML. I'll just go and create a content.md file. Hello, ViteConf. Hello, ViteConf. Just write something here. And this should be good for us. We can now import a Markdown file here. And we can also render it here. This is just giving us HTML, so I can just directly render the HTML. Oh, I'm not running the dev server. And yeah, we have our Markdown content rendered here. I can also go and use other Markdown things, and it just works. The cool part here is these imports are getting resolved by these are going through Vite. So you can just use any extension here that is supported by Vite. If it's not supported by Vite, you can go and find the plugin that supports it and install it in your viteconfig.ts and use it. So a lot of times you just have to look for how to do something in Vite rather than how to do something in Abell. Next thing, so yeah, here we have fixed for we have runtime libraries support now. Just like you import any local file, you can also import any of the npm package and just run it inside those curly braces. Let's talk about the reusability now. This is again an important thing where maybe you just want to define a navigation bar for all pages. Before that, let me just create another page. So I'll just create about.abell file, which will act like another page. And then I'll just maybe have about heading. Cool. We have a different page now. Then I'll go and define a component. You can define components with earlier underscore. So this will just tell Abell to not actually create this as a page in the output. We'll see. There are some really cool things that you can do with this as well. We'll talk about that. Here I can just go and define maybe a basic navigation bar. Something that takes me to index page. Something that takes me to about page. Let's import this in both about and index of Abell. Okay, here's a cool thing. If you have to figure out what value something holds, you can actually just go and console log it. So I can go and console log navbar to see what does it output. It says that it's a function, so let's just call that function. You would notice it's HTML. Anytime you import a Abell file, it becomes a JavaScript function that returns the HTML. So it's a JavaScript function that is returning the HTML, which means I can just put it here. And this sort of acts like a component. I can also do the same thing in about page where you can just go and import a navigation bar. Now we have this about page and we have index page, and both have these navigation bars now. You can also go and put some styles here. Any style you put here becomes scoped for this component, so it won't really get applied to anywhere outside of this component. So maybe I can just give some background to this, maybe a light background. And yeah, you have a component working now. You can sort of make things reusable with this by defining these component files. So we have fixed for this. Next thing I want to fix is custom routing, and this is actually my favorite part. This is something that is tricky even in the existing libraries, but I kind of like how it's done in Abell. Let's talk about that. So let's say I don't really like to follow these underscore, or I don't really want to follow any directory structure in particular. I just want to manually define the configurations for my router. I can go and do that with entry.build.ts. This is like an entry file for build, where I can go and export a function called make routes. Make routes function allows us to define routes for your project. So if I go here and let me just add a type here so it's easier for us to understand. So here you can return path and render. Path is something which tells you what path you want to support, and render is what should be rendered when that path is hit. Here's a cool part. You can remember how I said you can import Abell files and that becomes JavaScript function. So I can actually go and import my Abell file again here. It's showing type issues because I haven't defined tsconfig. We can do that. But yeah, this is index page. And again, this is just JavaScript function that returns HTML. So I can actually pass it here and make it work. Where is it? Yeah. And this continues to work. So if I go and make any change, this is still applied. Now here's a cool part. We're just returning HTML here. Does that mean we can do this, where we just statically define something? You can. Hold up. Yeah, you can do this, where you can just statically define any of the HTML that you want to be rendered. Again, this is like very insane, but you probably just want to import some file. But the cool part here that I want to show is you can actually opt out of .abel files themselves with Abell and just use Abell as a router for anything. So I can also just go and import maybe an actual HTML file. It allows us to import as a raw string. So I can import it as a raw string and just return that HTML itself here. And that will just work. Pretty cool, right? So that was about routing. There's one more cool thing that you can do with routing with combination of Vite. Vite allows us to do something like build pages, import meta glob. Vite allows you to define some glob imports. So I can just have a glob syntax and tell Vite to import anything that is ending with .abel in this directory. Let's just try to console log this and see what we get. We get this object. These functions are just functions that are returning HTML. What I'm trying to focus on is you can technically take this glob and just turn them into routes dynamically. So you can do things like just loop over all your markdown files and create the routes the way you want. And this just allows you to do a lot of fun dynamic things. Again, this is something that Vite supports. I'm not really doing anything on the Abell end, so it's pretty cool that it's working like this. Let's actually just go and define TS config for this. There's too many errors here. Um, so I can just go and define tsconfig.json. I already have some basic tsconfig copied. So to define types, you can just do you can just pass Abell types to the types, and it will define the Abell types for you. So yeah, your Abell things are working now. Not sure why this is not working, but this will give you the type for Abell files, and even the Vite things are resolved. Um, all right. There's one more cool thing that I want to show. That is testing. We know that VTest is a library that uses ViteConfig, right? And Abell is built on top of Vite, which is again just a Vite plugin. So I can just go and install VTest. I'll just add a test script here. And I can go and define a navbar.test.ts file maybe, which just imports few things from VTest. Yeah, which just imports describe, expect, and it from VTest. And let's just write a test for our component. So I'll just say navbar. It should render navbar. Expect. Remember how I said importing Abell file just imports it as a JavaScript function that returns HTML, which means, and VTest is using the same config. I can actually go and do this and just call it here. And let's run the test. And yeah, we have the testing without really any configuration, without any additional configuration. You can just use your components and just call them as a function, and you get the HTML that they're going to output. I think this is pretty cool. Um, let's go and see what we have solved. We have solved custom routing. We still have the same flexibility of the vanilla setup. So the setup is still very close to that. We're just writing JavaScript inside the braces. It has a comparatively smaller learning curve. There is obviously some learning curve for maybe understanding components or the make routes API, but it's just something that we can't really avoid. And this is just as minimal learning curve as possible. If you know the vanilla HTML CSS setup, it's still easy to deploy because it's just static website. One more cool thing. Let's actually do npm run build here. We didn't really try that. Before that, I'll just remove this entry build because I kind of want to show the complete build to you. If I do npm run generate, when you're not writing any client-side JavaScript in your code, your disk will not have any client-side JavaScript. So if you see, we just have two files, index and about. Index has the your rendered things. So this is a list that is rendered, or this is your markdown content that is rendered. So you don't really have any extra client-side JavaScript that you have not written. So yeah, you can build like super fast things with this. All right, there's one more cool example that I want to show. That is, here we've been just talking about the dynamic things in the build time, but you probably also want some interactivity. And it can be difficult to build super interactive things in this kind of setup, where in this setup, you would just need a framework. Remember how I said Abell is a framework agnostic static site generator? So let's talk about that framework agnostic part. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create initial Vite project. Again, this is not really Abell. Just want to create a basic Vite project. I'll use solid.js for example, but you can do this with other frameworks as well. And I'll do npm install. I'm just quickly going to go through this, but yeah. 5. All right, this is the initial setup that you get with Vite and Solid. The thing is, this is being client-side rendered, so this is empty. Let's just use Abell to pre-render this route. I'll close this, install Abell. We'll turn this into Abell. And then we just turn all the HTML files into .abel files. And one last thing that we want to change is we just want to change the dev and build scripts. So I can do Abel dev. You can just do Abel generate on this. I don't really need the preview one. And I think we have done this. Let's just try npm run dev. And yeah, we have this thing running, but we're not really pre-rendering yet. For example, if I go and see, this route is still empty. So we kind of have to pre-render it now here. Remember how I said you can write any JavaScript here in this curly braces? So you can also just do rendering here. I'll have to go to the solids documentation and just copy paste some of the code. So here we have render to string. I'm just going to copy paste this part. And also want to copy paste the import. And yeah, this is not going to work because Abel doesn't understand JSX. To make Abel understand JSX, you can actually go and override the ES build configurations of Abel with this config. So I can just say loader JSX. And I can also just define a JSX factory, which should be create component for solid. All right, we have this. We'll also add create component here. And we want to import the app. And yeah, one thing is this becomes SSR true, which will just help Solid to figure out that it's SSR. We are getting two renders here. So one is the render is happening here, but in the client side, we don't really want to render again. We just want to hydrate. So I'm going to change this into a hydrate call. And there's one more change that we do in SolidJS where we add a hydration script into the head. This one. So if I just go and add this, and we want to add this to head, so we can also just add it to head like this. Let me just restart the server. Yep. Cool. We have hydration working, and if we go to view page source, you would notice that this is all pre-rendered now. So you're actually getting your components pre-rendered. This is not client-side rendering anymore. We moved to static-side generator with Abel. You can do something similar with React and other frameworks as well. Here I just did it manually to show an example, but you'll find some integration examples where it'll be easier to do this. And yeah, at the end, HTML is kind of cool, and Abel makes it cooler. It just extends the vanilla setup and adds some nice cool things on top of it. I've been working on this for a few years and have some exciting news. Abel's V1 beta is out now. When you npm install Abel, you'll find you'll have V1 beta installed. It's built on top of Vite. Shout out to Vite team. Most of the things that I showed are not really done by Abel, are done by Vite. Abel just ends up being a part that exposes things to Vite and to consumers to allow you to do these things. Vite plugin support custom routing we talked about, extends on vanilla HTML setup. So it's something that's still seem familiar with your initial HTML CSS setup. It's a bit low level and flexible. It's a bit low level, which is why you'd probably have to like add the hydration scripts and do the rendering manually. Other You'll see other frameworks like Astro have some higher abstractions on this, which is again pretty cool if you want to get things up and running quickly. But if you want flexibility, this low level kind of ends up becoming a trade-off. So if you like writing that part on your own and just want to have some flexibility on that part, you can give Abel a try. And yeah, thank you so much. You can check out abeljs.org. You can also go and start Abeljs GitHub if you like Abel. You can also reach out to me on Saurabh Daware. There's a documentation site where you'll find everything that I talked about. There's some interactive examples which you can play around. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. Bye.